Episode 40 of the Auld Triangle is here, as always, with me, Andy Stevenson, Caoilte the Barra. We are going to take you through the good and the bad of Irish mixed martial arts that has happened. Obviously, it's been a mixed bag of results for Irish mixed martial arts stars. We provide the good news, we provide the bad news, and that's what we're going to kick off with straight away today. Obviously, we had big UFC fights for Kiefer Crosby, who just recently fought last weekend. Rhys McKee and Caolan Loughran obviously in action for UFC Paris. We're going to get straight into it here, guys. Lots to discuss again. Henry Fadipe and Conor McCarthy will join us as guests today on the Auld Triangle. We appreciate their times. Both have fights coming up. And we will see and hear from them a little bit later on. But as I said, first, lads, we're getting into the UFC action. We'll talk about Kiefer. It happened last weekend. Went in and travelled over to Australia to take on Kevin Jousset, City Kickboxing. Basically fought a guy in his back garden on short notice. It was a difficult task on paper, guys, and it proved to be a difficult task inside the octagon as well. But, you know, we did see some flashes from Kiefer, but it would be hard, I would say. Maybe I'll go over to you first, Andy, to talk about that. It would be hard to kind of, you know, give a full good account of yourself, given the circumstances that Kiefer had to kind of overcome in this fight too. And especially coming in against a guy like Kevin Jousset, who looks a real good prospect as well. You know, the ending didn't quite go as well as Kiefer would have wanted. You know, the finish came rather easily, I guess, in the end. Just a brief moment of hesitation from Kiefer, with maybe going for the judo throw and having his back taken and submitted at the end of round one. He'll be disappointed, of course, but definitely showed enough that to say, you know, that's what the UFC like, you know, coming in, taking short notice fights, taking the chance. And I'm sure we'll get to see Kiefer again. But maybe your thoughts on the actual fight itself, Andy.
Yeah, look, it was a tough one. I going into this fight to speak about the fight itself was, I thought it was going to be a banger, and I thought it wasn't going to last very long, and I didn't know which way. Like, I thought it was a very 50-50 fight coming in. As you said, like, I thought Kiefer gave a great account of himself early on. I thought that, you know, he was pushing Jousset back against the cage. He was landing some nice shots. Like, it's not as if he went in there. Like, I saw a lot of people, there was kind of a big reaction online to it, and I didn't think he absolutely got blown out of the water by any means. Obviously, as the fight went on, look, Jousset is a big guy. He had a serious height advantage, serious reach advantage. He's fought and won titles at middleweight as well. Kiefer's in that kind of in between where, you know, for so long he was calling for the 165-pound division, which is probably never coming in MMA. So he was dealing with that, and I think Jousset kind of just was able to establish his range. He was cracking with the low kicks, which were having an effect. Or if I recall, Laura Sanko was kind of pointing that out, where, you know, Kiefer was forced to switch stances, etc. And yeah, look, I think it'll be a disappointing one for Kiefer. Obviously, you know, he's probably incredibly confident in his entire skill set, as he talked to us about, you know, going in there as a martial artist. Once he went for the judo throw, obviously Jousset is I think he was on the French national team in judo black belt. He was able to defend it. He was able to get to a dominant position and just latch on to a choke immediately, and that was it. So yeah, look, a disappointing result for Kiefer. But as you said, he's going over there on short notice. We had him on last week or a couple of weeks ago now, but he said the last thing on his mind after signing or being given the contract news was, well, when is this, and who's the opponent, and yeah, like, I know obviously we saw the lads flying over first class courtesy of Conor McGregor, but whether it's first class or economy, it's still a hell of a lot of travel on short notice to get acclimatized. You're fighting at 8:30 in the morning. Yeah, it's tough. It was a tough ask.
It was. The fight itself, Caoilte, like Andy alluded to, you know, as Jousset opened up, working heavy on the low calf kicks, and you could see that they were affecting Kiefer. You know, City Kickboxing are known for their low calf kicks. They have an excellent kind of technique around it, and we see a lot of fighters coming out with City Kickboxing utilizing that kind of technique. And, you know, when you take one of those, it can have a detrimental effect, but we could see visually that it was affecting Kiefer's leg, which may have taken him out of his game a little bit in his forward pressure. But, you know, what we were saying about Kiefer, maybe what he was alluding to himself, was trying to draw Kevin Jousset into a little bit of a war. But I thought that Juicy did quite well to remain kind of calm and composed and not get drawn into that, even though, like Candy said, Kiefer did have a couple of good moments, a couple of good shots over the top, overhand right, a couple of nice body work as well. And Andy was right as well in saying that it was quite competitive, but the finish kind of came so quickly, and towards the end of the round, it kind of caught everybody by surprise, I think, including Kiefer himself.
Yeah, completely. I thought that when Kevin kind of came into it, I didn't expect his striking to be as good, or I thought he'd get caught up in the moment just a little bit and all the crowd, and maybe get into that firefight and give Kiefer what he wanted, but he was calm. He kind of tried to keep his range quite a bit, and that's the kickboxing kind of training looks to be really kind of engraved into his style now as well. And I'd say once that's fully, he's there for quite a long time, or once he starts getting a lot better in the striking department, he could be a real big problem. And as you said, those calf kicks, they look like they were paying dividends after a while, especially near the end of the round. Kiefer had those flashes. He was landing some good strikes over the top. I got a bit excited at times when he was landing one or two of those overhands. I thought he could have gotten the inside and maybe cracked him. I think beforehand I even said if Kiefer gets the inside and gets one of those overhands, it could be game over, especially when smaller man, short center of gravity, could just fly one of those shots and hit him. But I think they could drop, but it just wasn't the case. And yeah, look, near the end, just one of those, it was a moment where maybe a slight adjustment in future, maybe a full camp, that wouldn't have happened. But it was a moment where Kevin Juicy managed to get down a position, which, no surprise, when he was able to take advantage of it and recognize it so quickly, given the fact that he's a judo black belt and such a high level judoka at that as well. So overall, I think it's very hard to criticize Kiefer very much on that performance, given the circumstances surrounding the entire fight. And not to mention, they were competing at, was it 8 a.m. in the morning Sydney time as well, which it's a bizarre thing to be thinking of as well, because I imagine what time you're waking up at alone after all that traveling and adjusting. And yeah, I imagine there was a lot that would have been quite difficult. But overall, look, it was a tough start to the UFC career, but I can't see it defining his UFC career, to say the very least.
Oh, not at all. I would expect that we'll see Kiefer in there. Like, and another thing I noticed was that, Andy, there was a clear size difference between Juicy and Kiefer. You know, like you had mentioned, Kiefer has been kind of bouncing between 155 and 170, between lightweight and welterweight, and he's kind of one of many fighters that are caught in that kind of middle where, you know, 155 is a difficult cut for him, but he if he can get down there, he is dangerous and has power down there. Whereas that, you know, sometimes he can be a little bit undersized at 170, and it definitely was the case with Kevin Juicy, who looked like a welterweight in there, and a big welterweight at that, who a guy who cuts down probably a good bit of weight to get 170, where as I would feel maybe Kiefer is maybe walking around at that weight. Like, moving forward, Andy, would it be a thing that you would like to see Kiefer maybe try and go down and cut down to try and make the 155 and give himself a chance? It's a tough question for me to ask you. I think Kiefer would be the guy to ask that, but yeah, well,
that's what, you know, 100%. That's exactly what kind of how I'd respond to that is that's a question for Kiefer Crosby as to, you know, where does he feel healthiest? Where does he feel like he can perform to his best? So look, if it is a case where the weight cuts are not doable, and he needs to be fighting at 170 because that's the next weight class, well then look, that's just something, you know, just the size and height and weight, or not weight, well yeah, weight, because when you're in the cage, and reach discrepancies are just something that you have to deal with. But you're in a really awkward spot when you are, like Kevin Juicy, I think, is a bit of an outlier. He's kind of like look at it, you know, there's a bit of a ridiculous call out after the fight where he's calling out Ian Gary, but if you look at Ian Gary, and he's 6'3" or something, one of the bigger, you know, there are a bunch of fighters in the division who you'd be going up against that are that kind of frame, that size. But, you know, we have seen Kiefer make 155 before. I think the last time was probably the Car Canyon fight in Bellator. So it just depends on, you know, can he do it? Is that a possibility for him? So if it is, and if he feels healthy, then yeah, like, you know, I probably would like to see him go down to 155, but really it depends on
and in fairness, like, it's a little bit of it's an unfair question as well, because, you know, we got to see Kiefer not on a full camp there at welterweight. So maybe at the very least we get to see him at a full camp welterweight fight next, and maybe.
Well, I would hope that, like, Jesus, I would hope. I saw, you know, there's a strong reaction online afterwards. You would hope that you would be seeing Kiefer Kiefer get at least another fight in the UFC when you've taken this short notice. You're going halfway across the world. Like, I would be shocked if he didn't. And to be honest, it was an exciting fight. Like, whether a result aside, I enjoy, from a spectacle perspective, it was a fun fight to watch.
Taking opportunities like that is something that the UFC want and respect and will reward as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that with Caolan Loughran and his situation in just a few moments as well. But, there's always going to be shit talk online. And I think people sometimes have unrealistic expectations here around certain fighters, that we have to allow certain fighters and respect certain fighters for, number one, where they're at in their careers, whether it's at the start of their careers, whether it's coming towards the end of their careers. But you know what? Fighters are putting a lot of sacrifice into their whole lives for opportunities like Kiefer Crosby got. I'm not going to be the one who will look at. We're in a position where we have to come in here and we have to talk about the good times and we have to talk about the bad times and we have to talk about the good performances and the bad performances. But, the overall general landscape of performances is what we try our best to kind of talk about and, break down here. And it was a difficult task here for Kiefer. None of us had said that, he was going to go in and blow this guy out of the water. It was always going to be a difficult fight for him. I think, at his best, it would be interesting to see how it would go, but I don't think we did see Kiefer at his best. And that was due to the circumstances that were, maybe a little bit out of his control, taking the fight at short notice, not being able to perform. But what I'm looking forward to, and I definitely think he is going to get another opportunity in the UFC. I think he told us 4-fight contract he signed.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So hopefully, the UFC will honor that contract and he'll get a chance to kind of fully show his potential there. At this stage of his career, if we're being realistic, a run up the rankings is probably unlikely, but there's a couple of good, exciting fights inside the UFC for Kiefer Crosby, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him, go in there with a full camp. If they do bring the show back to Ireland, give him a good matchup on that, and we'll see what's happening. Anything else to add, guys, before we move on?
No, not really, no.
All good. Yeah, let's talk about Rhys McKee and Caolan Loughran. UFC Paris, not an ideal outcome for either one of the lads. We'll talk about Rhys McKee first, who went back in there and took on Angie Lusa in the welterweight division. A big opportunity for Rhys. He knew it. We spoke about it as well. All the talk was, this was the second opportunity to kind of make waves inside the UFC. And I have a level of empathy here towards Rhys McKee, who definitely did not want to go out into this contest and get clipped with that big overhand right so early in it, because a shot like that, Caoilte, can really change a fight. You're going in there, you visualize what you want to happen and you want to kind of keep it cool, calm and composed early stages, but when you get hit with a shot like that, it kind of throws everything up in the air, doesn't it?
It does. And Angelusa had this, he liked to rush Rhys at times and almost force that massive shot over and try and clip him whenever he could. I don't feel like Rhys actually got going as well as he could have very early on in the fight. I feel like he grew into it maybe later. He did grow into it later in the fight. Came against a lot of adversity early on, but getting clipped early is never going to help, because he's that early bit of damage and you're going to be wary of that constantly afterwards then. And it was a tough start to the fight, but and I guess if you go into the rest of it in round two, he did kind of fight his way back into it a little bit. And feel free to come in as well whenever you feel like it as well. Here, we can just have a conversation about it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's like, coming back. One thing, like, we have to look at the negatives, but you also need to try and focus on some of the positives, and that's what Rhys and the team will be doing as well. But what we've seen in what I would kind of compare in with the Alex Morona fight is where he was kind of out of the fight and never really in the fight in that, whereas he never really he had to face some adversity a little bit, but he did kind of fight his way back into it a little bit in round one. Obviously things didn't go his way in round two, but then he fought his way back into it again in round three and almost got a finish in round three. So there is some positives to take out of the performance. Obviously Rhys will be it overall, but on the other hand, you could say the fight could have been stopped in round two as well on another night, but he definitely showed the heart and determination that we all knew he had going in there to kind of, he sometimes Reece doesn't like doing things the easy way, and it was definitely that was the case in this Angie Lusa fight as well.
Jeez, it certainly wasn't an easy fight anyway. Like, yeah, like you were mentioning the Morona fight, and if I recall the Morona fight correctly, round 3 was McKee's best round. That's when, he started to come alive, and obviously this one, it was the exact same. The second round, I was blown away by just his durability, to be honest, which is not something I really want to be coming in and waxing lyrical about any fighter, let alone an Irish fighter. Obviously, this kind of moniker of the Irish zombies being thrown around now, and Reece doesn't like it. And understandably, look, we're talking about a sport where if you're known as a zombie, you're probably taking a lot of damage, which is not what you want. But yeah, man, I have so much respect for Reece McKee. Like the way that he stuck in there, and the way that he came alive in that third round. And I don't think any single Irish fan watching that was sitting down. I think everyone was screaming at their TVs, because it seemed like, you're in that kind of Hail Mary territory where you're 2 rounds down. Now, one interesting thing, I was speaking to McKee's team afterwards, and they told me that they were told by a doctor going into round 3 that it was 1 apiece. Now, obviously, look, I don't know who told them that. I don't think that was the case, and it's probably a 10-8 round. In the second, I would guess.
How would the doctor get that information in between rounds?
I've no idea. I don't know. I just, maybe I shouldn't have even mentioned that, but that's what I was told. So I don't know if there was, a surprise or confusion for them. Especially coming out of that third. But yeah, man, that third round was insane. It was absolutely insane.
I think if the right hand, just maybe to kind of count, like just to have a chat about like the scoring of the fight. I think if round 1 didn't have that big shot that hurt Reece at the start, that was a very, very close fight. But you've got to be looking at that as the most impactful shot of the round. Hence, that's I would have leaned to Lusa winning that round myself. Obviously, round 2, you're talking about that's pretty one-sided round where there's talks of maybe potential 10-8s in that round, but I don't think it was a 10-8. I think 10-9 was the right score. And then with Reece, like you said, coming back and winning round 3 and almost getting the fight finished as well at a stage. If he had a little more in the gas tank there, he might have been able to get Lusa out of there. But 29-28 Lusa,
fair score.
Is a fair score in my book anyway.
Yeah. I thought round 3 was Reece's round. I thought he had lost the first 2 rounds. I think the second round is there's no question that he lost that one when you look at the way that Lusa had him up against the cage. But yeah, look, it's disappointing. It's and look, Jesus, we're saying it's disappointing. There's nobody that's going to be more disappointed here than Reece McKee. After having that rough go, the first the 2 fights in the UFC, to be cut, to build himself back up. We talked about this ad nauseum with and without Reece, and to finally get there, and he's talking about it has to be the win. It has to be the win. Like, it's not about just getting back. It's about getting in the win column in the UFC, and then for it to not happen, that's gotta hurt. So yeah, like, I mean, I assume we will see Reece. I assume we'll see Reece again in the UFC. But look, he's 0-3 now, so it's just a tough spot to be in. And I hope he can turn it around.
Things don't get any easier from here when you do have results like that. I mean, the next one, there's even more pressure on it again. And that's, when you're fighting at the highest levels, that's what the pressure cooker is, unfortunately, so that extra pressure, that extra importance for Reece to get to win the next time out is going to be ever as important, and it'll be the biggest fight of his career so far. Like, I mean, every fight for Reece in the next little while will be the biggest fight, and almost every fight can be the biggest fight of your career as you're progressing up the ranks and developing in your professional career too. But is there any names that we'd like to see Reece go in there with? Do you think it's worth it now for Reece maybe just to dust himself off, wait and see if we have a Dublin card next year and try and come back to the Tree Arena and pick up a win there? What are you guys thinking? Whether Caoilte or Andy wants to come in on that, what are you guys thinking for the next steps for Reece?
I reckon, like, it depends on when they plan on putting the Dublin card on, because I guess what we previously spoke about of the hope of Paddy's Day or whatever, that looks to be well gone out the window anyway from what we've seen booked. I think there's some concert on at the same time in the Tree Arena, so I know if realistic time frame might be I believe Pete Carroll said on the crack was the anniversary of
the 10-year anniversary. Yeah, it was a good point that he made there too. Yeah, that's it would be. I was kind of like trying to will the St. Patrick's Day into existence because it works out better for me maybe to travel back. So I'm getting married next August, so I don't think a July card for me and the Dublin one will work out.
Ian Stagg is in the Three Arena.
yeah. It's like I'll maybe and lo and behold, imagine if it was on the same day of the wedding. Jesus, that'd be crazy. But look, we'd have to deal with that when it comes to it. But,
a wedding and a divorce in the same day.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, just pop off to the Tree Arena there, love, after getting married. That'd be hilarious. But I would like that. I would like that for pretty much. I'd like that for pretty much everyone that we're going to talk about in terms of the UFC. With Kiefer, with Reese, we'll talk about Caoilte now in a few minutes. Even with Shauna, getting anyone who's there, just getting yourself primed for that, and big important fights in front of your home crowd. Good matchups. The
only thing is it's a long way away, like July. If we're talking July next year, it's
it is. That's the thing. It is, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they think. I know December has been thrown around as well. It'd be interesting if Conor and Mike Chandler gets announced. Maybe that might open up an opportunity for a few Irish.
I would like to see Reese, particularly. I wouldn't like to see him jumping right back into a fight, purely from a damage perspective. I'd like to, just personally, I'd like to see him take a little bit of time off just to let the brain heal as much as possible.
And he's coming off active. He's coming off a very active period of his career as well, where he's been in some good.
But also, when we're talking about that, like if you think back to that fight against Justin Burlinson, like it was an amazing, incredible, phenomenal performance and win by Reese. But there was damage. There was a decent chunk of damage taken there.
Indeed. Let's move on to Caolan Loughran, lads. He went in there, probably took on the toughest task and had balls of steel to take this fight, really, guys, to be honest, on a couple of days' notice, coming in against a guy like Taylor Lapalus, who is a really kind of well-established professional now at this stage, over 20 fights, defined and kind of, you could see the difference of an experience in there between Caolan, who's only coming in there with less than 10 fights, against the guy with plus 20 fights. But, under the circumstances, we talked about circumstances for Kiefer. Caolan Loughran had some similar circumstances here in getting this fight, Caoilte, in the last minute, coming in against a tricky opponent as well. But, gave a really good account of himself and wasn't all that far away. Like, the naysayers were out, and we'll talk about this. Everybody wants to big everybody up, or is very quick to tear people down at the same time as well, where they're not willing to look at circumstances surrounding these fights. And there's a lot of people that wouldn't have done what Caolan Loughran did on the UFC debut and take such a high risk fight. And like he did, and he wasn't too far away when you really look down to the nitty-gritty side of it as well, Caoilte.
I really don't think he was. I thought he looked, given the circumstances, all that went on in the background. You go from this one opponent in Yanis Gamori, who probably is not as close to the level as Taylor Lapalus, who's so experienced and such a high caliber kind of MMA fighter, different style, everything. And I thought Caolan went in there and put on a very good performance against him. He was still in that fight. He was very close, and he could have won it, I guess, in that final round. It just didn't go. It just didn't go his way. He couldn't get that takedown. He couldn't hold him down and get off some strikes. Lapalus managed to keep it standing, pick him off the jab. But it was a very tough fight. I thought Lapalus did very well with the jab and keep it standing. But when Caolan got it down and managed to get a hold of him, you could see how good he is and what he can actually do to fighters. So. There's a lot of positives to take from that fight, especially given the circumstances and the level of opponent. I thought he put on a very good account of himself and deserves a lot of credit, really, for everything that went on. He made that fight feel like a main event. It's ridiculous.
It was unreal, yeah. That's what I was kind of going to go to a little bit more about the fight, Andy. I'll get your thoughts on the fight. We can talk about maybe the overall kind of hype around it and the way he kind of made it more of a bigger fight than maybe what it should have been, to be honest. But for me, Caoilte mentioned the jab. It was a problem in the Hazan fight. I spoke to him myself about it as well. It seems to be a little bit of a problem that Caolan is going to have to work out. He'll know that himself. a lack of movement off the center line, perhaps. Wrestling kind of worked for him at stages, but more experience will bring those skills, and he will come in at a different level the next time out. But for me, he was 30 seconds away from winning this fight, and it was the last exchange in the last 30 seconds in round 3 where Lapalus landed a couple of heavy shots on the feet, and Caoilte was utilizing his grappling, and it probably wasn't as successful as he would have wanted it to be, but it was still effective enough to make this a really close fight. And to me, it was just that final 30 seconds that, and he probably knows this himself, or it's not going to be easy for him to hear, but he was really, really close from getting the win there. It was just the last couple of shots that Lapalus landed that probably cost him in the end.
I agree. I pretty much agree with everything you said there. I think that it was, though. Like, I think he was as you mentioned, not every takedown was successful, and there were at times he was chasing the takedown, but every time he was doing that, it was eating more minutes or seconds off the clock, where Lapalus wasn't mounting an offense, and it wasn't like Lapalus was like it wasn't like he was throwing a whole heap of volume at Loughran throughout the fight. So I thought it 1-1 going into the third, and I thought that with his pressure wrestling and the shots here and there that he was utilizing off his grappling, that Loughran was winning that round, exactly as he said, until I'm trying to remember it specifically now, but I think he kind of he stepped back almost and started to trade with Lapalus in the center of the cage.
He kind of should have stuck with the game.
He landed
plan.
a few nice clean shots.
Yeah, he should have stuck, in my opinion. I think if he had stuck with the game plan of just kind of trying to push Lapalus up against the fence, and you're not going to directly score pressure in mixed martial arts, but when there's nothing else to score, when it's fairly even, they will go to that. But I heard Sean and a couple of lads talking about it before. It's sometimes, as a fighter, you need to give the judges something to score, and I think that's what Taylor Lapalus did towards the end of round 3 there. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that he did, and look, I think that the fact that we're talking about a period of kind of 10, 15, 20 seconds where there's some exchanges, and that being the determining factor of who won the fight, means that Caoilte Loughran was very, very close to defeating an incredibly experienced fighter here in his UFC debut. And look, coming into Cage Warriors, we all talked about the lack of depth or the lack of experience that Caoilte had faced to date in his pro career. He was fighting guys that were 0-31, 0-39, 3-5, 0-0, 1-0. Well, then that flips the other way. So if we're looking at his career so far, he has fought 1, 2, 3, 4 fights where he's fought guys with winning records of 1-0, 5-0, 10-3, and 9-0. And then he's going in his UFC debut and fighting a guy who's fought 21 times as a professional. So if we want to flip it one side, then we flip it the other too. That's an impressive feat to be almost beating someone of that caliber of because we all know, everyone, as it's been talked about already, people on the European scene will know that this is a tough fucking fight for him to take on short notice when he's game planning for a different fighter, and it's not even his fault. It's not like someone got injured. A guy came in and from what we've heard, couldn't make weight, so they rejigged the card to make sure that everyone had fights. And fair play to the UFC for doing that, and fair play for getting him a fight. But it meant that Caoilte Loughran was going from fighting a guy in Yanis Kamori who got finished on the night and had way fewer fights than Lapalus to fighting a guy of Lapalus's caliber. So yeah, it's tough.
Couple of quick things before we'll go ahead there, Caoilte.
I was gonna say, is like Lapalus had did he not have UFC experience, or did he not have a few fights in UFC?
He did. He fought
3-1 in the UFC.
Before Caoilte even made his amateur debut.
100%, yeah, 100%. Those are all factors that you need to take into account. And with Caoilte, look at, I heard John Kavanagh, seen him, he wanted to match him up with Brad Katona. I don't like that at all. It's too much. But like you think, we're talking here about putting him in there with too experienced of a guy, and then the same breath we're going to talk about putting him in there with Brad Katona. I don't like that. I think we should be getting a Yanis Kamori type fight for Caoilte Loughran next, and at least give him the chance to develop against similar experienced guys as well, because we've seen there, experience can get you over the line, and I think that's what happened with Taylor Lapalus with Caoilte Loughran. But as we said, a very good account of himself, and maybe just to address the naysayers based off, he kicked up a bit of a fuss. He called out French MMA. And he made, yeah, but that's it. Like, that's the fight game, man. And then look at it, he knows himself, and he didn't shy away from it after the fight. He released a video. He accepted.
Did you see that? I was going to ask. Did you see that video he put up on TikTok?
Yeah,
with the deer.
Yeah, it was credit to him for doing that. But look, at when you do talk about that, and Caolan knows this himself, you are going to draw some extra criticism. But we're in the entertainment business, and it's not about, like, sometimes going in there and performing. You've got to create a little bit of hype around yourself. You've got to remember. I guarantee everyone is going to remember Caolan Loughran for maybe good or for bad, but it's all about making people remember, making people want to see you for good or bad, or want to see you win or want to see you lose. We're in the fight business here, and that's important. But he didn't shy away from it, and you have to give him credit for that as well, Andy. Yeah,
100%. Like, I watched the video he put up, and Jesus, I've never had more respect from him in his entire career than after watching that. Like, he completely taking it on the chin. He's clearly just, I don't know if distraught's the right word, but he's heartbroken that he's lost this, the biggest moment in his career. But he's not shying away from it. He's like, yeah, look, I knew this day was coming, and it's not going to break me, and I'm going to go and fix the things. And it's, true character comes out when you're going through moments of adversity. And to me, I've in a weird way, I've never been more confident in Caolan Loughran's career than I am right now.
100%. Just before we go, look, at you highlighted the fact that hadn't been a good run for Irish mixed martial arts debuts in the UFC, and he drew a little bit of criticism online. You were wanting to just
Paul Redmond's out for my head.
Anything else to say about that? I mean, add a little bit more context to maybe the stats.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, no, look, I just put out a stat, or a list essentially of the results of Irish MMA UFC debuts essentially. And, there's ticks and there's X's beside, and it's literally just, did they win or did they lose? And it drew a little bit of criticism and I think misinterpretation, to be honest, because it was just putting out a list of, here are the results, and highlighting the fact that, look, it's not been a good run. Now, there's a whole lot more context that goes behind, someone's result or someone's performance or all that stuff. Like, fully aware, like, Rhys McKee went in on days' notice to fight fucking Khamzat Chimaev. That's a loss in his UFC debut, but, like, come on, like, that's a tough fucking debut. Caolan Loughran, we just talked about, he's going in fighting one guy on short notice. He goes in and fights another guy, and of course, look, I'm sure. Obviously, Paul's name is on that list, and Paul shoots straight, and I respect the shit out of that, to be honest with you. So I have no issue with him commenting this at all. Paul Redmond is probably one of the worst examples of getting a raw deal in your UFC debut, where he had to cut an absolutely insane amount of weight down to 145, where he should have never been in the UFC on short notice, destroying his body essentially to get down to the weight. To then go in and fight a man where he just wasn't at an optimal state. So there's context behind all of these, and Jesus, like, putting out a list like that is never to summarize a fighter's ability or their career or who they are at all. It's just a list. And look, the reality is, we're on, when it comes to the wins and losses and the stats, it's not been a good run for Irish fighters debuting at the moment. And I don't want that to be the case. I hope every Irish fighter goes into their UFC debut and gets the win. But yeah, look, that's where we're at right now. But yeah, no issue at all. I'm sure maybe he thought I was trying to. I think that you said, like, kicking fighters when they're down. Absolutely zero intention of doing that whatsoever. I've no intention of kicking anyone down when they're losing or even when they're winning or anything like that. Just try and be as fair as possible and provide context. So yeah, look, it is what it is. But yeah, hopefully we get a lot more UFC debut wins in the future.
100%. We do have a couple of Irish mixed martial arts wins to talk about. Obviously, it didn't work out for the lads. They'll be back for sure. But going over to you first, Caoilte, we'll talk about Dom Norcus, who performed last weekend at Battle Arena. First round TKO after 56 seconds for the Team KF prospect who made his mixed martial arts debut. And look, I'll hold my hand up, and I would be a guy when I heard that Dom was going to professional so early in his career after just a couple of amateur fights, being so young as well. I had some questions, But I don't really have any questions anymore. Look, he went out there, showed his levels above his opponent, and took him out of there in under a minute, and kind of showed why he turned pro, didn't he?
Kids electric, really, really impressive. Went out and just put on not maybe a bit of striking masterclass, but he just dominated Caoilte, who's a bit of a veteran, but he looked levels above him. He went out and just outstruck him. That left hook was money. He was going upstairs, downstairs with it. It was fantastic to watch. It was only quick. It was less than a minute, but I feel like the referee did Caoilte a favour there by stopping it before the inevitable stoppage came, and stopping Caoilte taking any more damage. But Dominic Norcus looked fantastic. Yeah, I would have been the same boat as you before in terms of thought he may have gone too early, but no, he proved it completely wrong. I think he's got another one coming up again soon. Incredible.
And he just turned 19 as well. He's a firecracker.
Yeah, Dom has been on your radar for a little while, Andy. I know that you've been an admirer of him from early in his amateur career, as we all have here. But yeah, answered a lot of questions there on last Saturday.
Yeah, he looked great. He looked ferocious, but yeah, I've been looking forward to this debut. I watched Dom make his amateur debut, which was only I think last year or something like this, or it wasn't long ago at all. And my God, he's looked brilliant as an amateur, and I think he's going to look pretty damn good as a pro if his performances are anything to go by. So yeah, look, early days, but I'm very excited to see how his career progresses as a pro.
100%. I'll stick with you, Andy, for Jordan O'Neill, who picked up a good win at FCC, a decision win over a very difficult and tricky opponent in Charles Joyner. It was a really entertaining fight. Dropped the first round, kind of came back into it. Although the first round, Charles Joyner should have had a point taken. Jordan took not one but two low blows there, and the second one was really, really bad. And the referee should have came in and taken a point. Joyner was lucky not to have it. Probably picked up the round because of that. But Jordan O'Neill adapted to the style and to the length that Joyner was bringing. Picked up round 2 and round 3. Utilised his grappling really well. I was really impressed by this performance. I know Caoilte and Andy, you are as well. A good win early in your professional career against a pretty tricky opponent, that will stand to him, and that's going to be a good win for Jordan O'Neill on his record. Andy, would you agree?
100%. I thought he dealt with Joyner very, very well. Like, as you said, like, Joyner's a tall, big guy, long reach, kind of like what we were talking about early on with Kiefer, as you say. But yeah, like, Jordan O'Neill did a brilliant job. I believe Joyner has a wealth of kickboxing experience too, and you could kind of tell as they were trading on the feet, especially early doors, that it was two lads who were, they're early pros, but they know what the hell they're doing in there. I thought that O'Neill did a brilliant job of kind of breaking the distance, a bit of hand fighting, and then breaking the distance and getting his shots in with the big left hooks and the big shots over the top, and then ultimately kind of using his striking as entries into his grappling and taking it from there. But yeah, those nut shots in round 1 looked absolutely horrific. The second one obviously put him down, and I was shocked that a point didn't get taken. But this is really, really positive stuff from Jordan O'Neill, who we've seen competed at a multitude of weight classes as an amateur, and now is kind of settled at middleweight. So very excited to see again him progress, another fighter early in his career, but very excited to see how he progresses, and maybe get him onto a show like a Cage Warriors or something like sometime soon. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I'd love to see that as well. He was scheduled there to fight on the Belfast card earlier on this year, I believe. It'd be nice to see him getting in there and getting a crack maybe at the Dublin card down the line, or we'll see. There's a couple of Cage Warriors shows, but sealed the deal at the end of the fight as well by getting on top in full mount and was raining down shots, and Joyner was pretty much saved by the bell towards the end of the fight. A really, really good win for that, as it was for Owen Sheridan. Or maybe we'll keep on last weekend first. Alan Philpott was had a great win at Eternal MMA 78 against Sean Etchell, and Caoilte, it's great to see Alan back in the mix. Obviously he had a difficult run of it lately and flirted with retirement, made the decision to come back and picked up a good solid win there last weekend as well. It was great to see.
Yeah, you decided to go back to bantamweight for this one after a spell at featherweight. Went up against a tough opponent in that I believe he won. I think he won titles across 2 different weight classes in some different promotions. He was on road to UFC as well. But Alan went in. I feel like he actually probably should have gotten the stoppage earlier in the fight. There was a moment where there was an upkick thrown by Alan that was actually perfectly legal, and
Completely
it was deemed
legal.
and it was deemed as though it was an illegal shot in an accident. And Etchell turned over, and he was clearly hurt, but he wasn't able to continue with that period of time. So yeah, it's a strange one, but either way, he managed to go on and continue to impress in the fight, and finally managed to get the submission in the very end.
Big boo-boo there. And Andy, you know, when something like that happens to you in a fight as well, it can really fuck with you mentally, to be honest. And Alan did well to kind of compose himself in that and go out there and get the job done overall. And yeah, big important win for him in his career.
100%. And like, Jesus, like Alan Philpott fights there tends to be a little bit of drama with them. Like we've seen this happen before, and it's kind of not gone his way, where he's been looking great early days, and you know, something happens, and then all of a sudden he kind of gets caught with a submission or something like that. And when, I'm not going to lie, like when that was happening and when it was called, and I'm thinking, hang on, this is a perfectly legal shot. Why is this being stopped? If anything, this should be a TKO. I'm thinking, God, is this going to be another time where he's doing all the right things and it just doesn't go his way? And it didn't. And he looked brilliant. And he went into the next round, and he looked composed and brilliant fight IQ. And he looks comfortable. I know he was fighting a featherweight the last few. He's back at bantamweight. I think that's a smart move. He should stay there. And it's just brilliant to see. Like, Alan Philpott's been around the game for forever. It's his first win since 2019. So this was a really, really crucial win. Like, as you said, you know, a guy who won titles in 2 weight classes in this promotion, and he's right back in the mix. So fair play to him. Brilliant to see, and delighted for Alan.
An OG, as you said, Andy, of Irish mixed martial arts is Alan Philpott. Was joined by another OG of Irish mixed martial arts on the same card, and James McBride. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to kind of see this in full, Andy, but if you want to just take me through that, a good, exciting barn burner of a fight from what the brief shots I did see of it.
James McBride's my new favourite fighter. He lost by TKO. Brilliant fight. He's James McBride. Look, I'm not going to pretend that I heard of him before. He was probably before my time. I know, Ian, you said you remembered him from kind of early days on the Irish scene, and he's 39 years old, out living and training in Australia, and it's his first fight actually no, he had a win there earlier on this year, I think, but he hadn't fought in a few years prior to that. But it was an incredibly entertaining fight. He's a tough nut. My God, he took some shots and just came back absolutely swinging, and he looked like he had swung the momentum at one point of the fight. But look, he got caught with some hard shots to the body, and ultimately went down and kind of got caught by just clipped behind the ear. I thought it kind of looked back of the head, but he's fallen down, so I can see how it probably wasn't. But yeah, look, he lost. But fair play to him, 39 years old, and just making an absolute fight of it, and an incredibly entertaining fight to watch. I know, Caoilte, you were enjoying it as well.
I loved it. It was a barn burner. It was just one of those, like, he went out, and it wasn't even one of those fights where he was better in any different area. He was just tough as it comes, and he wouldn't stop, and he was eating shots and and he was swinging back at every opportunity. He knew, like, I thought he was going to get the sub on occasion. He'd take his opponent down. I can't remember his name, Josh Kuna or something. He'd take him down, and if he kept him there, I reckon he could have got the sub. But it was just so entertaining. It was brilliant, and yeah, fair play to him. 39 and still just going into absolute wars with these young fellas. This is just so good to watch. Fair play to him.
Yeah, indeed. Sinead Newell also picked up a good win over the weekend in what was a fairly hellacious fight as well. Caoilte at Battle Arena, picking up the win over Saga Elinas in her fight. Any thoughts on that? Another fight, potential fight of the night in Battle Arena. So Sinead's on a bit of a run at the moment. She's done quite well. I believe she switched up gyms and is training over in the UK now. I think it's the same gym as Chanel Dyer trains out of, or one of the, I could be wrong there, but can't remember. She's training up out in the UK now, and yeah, very good win. Bit of a barn burner, but very positive to get one of them. And I think she's up again in one of the Cage Warriors Academy shows soon after. Absolutely, yeah. So that's a brief look back. Some good news, some bad news for Irish mixed martial arts, and that's what happens. Yeah, but we wish everyone all the best. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in again. And we're also looking forward to seeing Henry Fadipe in action at Cage Warriors 86 this weekend. Before we go to that, we'll talk about Owen Sheridan's win. Actually, it almost slipped my mind before we move over to Henry's interview.
There's a new sheriff in town.
That's right. Golden Ticket Fight Promotions went down last weekend. Or the weekend before last. He took on Joey Dawkin and picked up a good solid win. a fight that was really going his way from the start. It just kind of, it's been kind of a slow start to Owen's professional career. Obviously had a setback before, had to kind of come through a little bit of turmoil, Andy, before he came in to fight Joey Dawkins here. But, an unbelievably sized man for this was a welterweight fight, wasn't it? Like
welterweight, he's huge. Like I feel like it's like an urban myth as to what Owen Sheridan's height actually is, because you speak to different people and you get different answers. But he's at least 6'5", probably more. So he's a huge welterweight. And look, he looks a serious striker. He completely dismantled Dakin to the point where the doctor obviously had to step in and say no mass. I think he knocked one of his teeth out as well. There was blood kind of pouring out of his face. So it was a destruction. He looked really good. And I know saying I can't remember the specific one, but I know he was injured and he had surgery. I don't know if it was a shoulder or what, but he was out for a bit. So he was obviously, I think, scheduled to make his pro debut on Premier FC. I think might have been last year, that never came to fruition. So a long time coming. And tell you what, this lad has a lot of support behind him. He really, like, I put up a reel and they got like something like 80,000 views or 60,000 views or something. There's a lot of people interested in his fight, so he'll be one to watch kind of moving forward too.
Absolutely, he will. Moving on, as I said, with Henry Fadipe is coming up this weekend, September 16th at KSW 86. He takes on Artur Shepaniak over there. When it does have a little bit of title ramifications. Shepaniak coming off of a kind of a title eliminator loss. So yeah, we'll speak about Henry, about that fight and a couple of other things as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Caoilte to get that interview kicked off with Henry Fadipe.
And now we welcome to the show Henry Fadipe. Henry, not too far out now from your about at KSW. How are you feeling?
I'm good, man. Good. I just back from the gym, training, working away.
So how's camp been so far? You been doing all right?
Pretty good, yeah. A little injuries here and there, but man, don't remember the last time I fought out an injury, so it's going on.
Look, I guess one area I want to start with is you fought in all these different promotions, but now look, KSW's come around and it came sort of out of the blue almost for a lot of us. But since it's come around, it's been quite a massive jump and a big step in a kind of competition, everything. How did it all come around and begin for you?
So after my break, after I got the papers sorted, because my manager's Polish, he had a lot of contacts in that side of the country, or that side of the world. I got a fight on MMA Attack, as you remember, in September. I did really well in that and got the call from KSW.
What's it been like in terms of step up in competition with KSW so far? Have you noticed anything in particular with it?
Yeah, the guys there, they're on the special water, I think. They're on the special water over there. They're just a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. But man, I still do my thing regardless. Yeah,
like I guess in the last, you've won two of your fights in KSW so far, and then there was the one loss. But if we go back to the loss, the canvas and that was just so slippery from
yeah. So you see what happened. The first time I fought there, it was slippy as well, but because of the way the fight went, it wasn't as much a problem. The second time I went in there and it just took me by surprise. The moment I stepped in there, I was like slipping and sliding everywhere. Like, what the hell? Like, I was scared to throw shots because I threw a jab and I was slipping. Like, I was scared to commit to anything. And I just messed with my head, and I don't know. Anyway, yeah. The third time I was more prepared, and we went in before the fight. We went in the afternoon before. We tested it out, and I kind of got used to it.
Before a fight, when you
knowing that doing anything to try and combat that, Henry?
So I've heard there's been a couple of fighters that have complained about similar, but I don't know if they're like. It's the material. I don't know if it's the material they use or whatever it is, but like it's every cage I've gone into is different. That one's just happens to.
It was mad though. Like watching that fight was crazy because like it looked like round one was like relatively okay, but not really still. And then it like I don't know how either of you could even throw a kick without slipping. To be honest with you,
I was throwing jabs. I was throwing a jab and sliding. Like I was scared to throw a jab. Like shit. You have to second guess everything you want to do, which was messing me up with my timing and everything. Obviously,
both of you had to deal with that, but like ultimately you came out to lose and ended that fight. Like, is that frustrating? Because like when you look at your KSW,
Yeah, see, like he was a wrestler. He's predominantly a wrestler. I'm a striker, so he was going for the single legs regardless of me slipping or whatever. He kept going for that single leg, which was fucking annoying. But yeah.
Are you worried about injuries when there's that happening with inside the cage and you're slipping and sliding everywhere, and it's like one bad slip and your knee could go, ankle could go? Is there that in the back of your mind when that's happening?
Yeah, but we kind of in my gym is similar. We have the PVC mats, and when it gets really wet, we have that kind of thing. So I've been using that as practice, trying to get used to it. There's no point complaining about it then. It's not gonna be changed. So just get used to it and work around it.
When do you fly out to Poland for this one then?
I go on Wednesday. Flying out Wednesday morning.
Very nice, very nice. Look, I think we're used to see, we've spoken about you being in the cage, we've seen you competing for all these years, but I guess outside the cage you've been hanging around with A-list celebrities. Can you talk to us about what this encounter with Will Ferrell, or babysitting Will Ferrell down Temple Bar, was like?
Yeah, so I was saying my coach is Russian. He's big in the security industry. I was in the gym one day, I was training, and he came up to me like, oh, because I do security as well. He came up to me like, oh, would you like to work on, Friday, Saturday? He was like, yeah, sure, why not? And like, oh, it's a celebrity. But he had no idea who the hell Will Ferrell was. So he shows me a picture, and he had no idea who he was. He showed me a picture, and I was like, do you know who the fuck that is? Like, yes, I'm joking.
Thought it was a joke. Did you think it was a joke when he showed it to you?
No, because I know he doesn't know who Will Ferrell is, so he wouldn't be joking about something like that. He just showed me a picture, like, man, do you know who that is? Like, no. He heard he's a celebrity. It's like, yeah, he's a fucking celebrity. It's Will fucking Ferrell.
And were you were you chatting with him much, or?
I was with him. Like, I was probably with him. He's the same character off camera. He's the same character off camera. He's just a big child, like.
And I'm assuming you've seen a lot of his movies, have you?
I've seen more. Yeah, come on. This is Will Ferrell, man. Take a big.
Ricky Bobby, baby.
So what does a night doing security for Will Ferrell look like? Fending people.
It was wild. Like, we got out and everyone was rushing him. Like, and that was the first time. That was my first bodyguard. My first time working as a bodyguard. It was fucking Will Ferrell. It was interesting. Everyone rushing him, and I had to be like, playing the part. Like, oh, hey, no. You took one picture, and that's it. No, me acting the gangster.
You're like, well, no more pictures.
Exactly.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. A random Friday or Saturday night. But what was he? Did you tell him that you were a fighter, or was he talking to you much about that?
No, we didn't get through all that. I was trying to be a professional, can be
professional, yeah, 100%. We were also very professional on the Baywatch shoot that you did for
yeah, that was fun.
That was one of the most hilarious promos that I've seen. I mean, the lads were talking about before.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the hell that was for.
How did it come about? And when did the idea come across your table, and how did it come about? Right?
The kids told me, guys, they just called me like, we need you on the beach. Like, yeah, for what? We're gonna do a shoot. Like, what? A Baywatch shoot? Like, okay. And it was sunny. It was nice. It was nice weather. It was lovely. Jumped in, man. It was fun. They gave me the little spinny thing. Like, yeah, do this. I haven't watched Baywatch, so I don't know who's who, and I had to watch like a quick promo to see what I was supposed to do.
Did they let you keep the red shorts and everything? They did.
They didn't let me. I just took it, and they're like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no choice in the matter. That's the perks of the job.
Exactly. It was on me. Like, I just walked away with it. It was good. That's what happened there.
Henry, trained in Phantom, the gym seems to be on this quite a bit of a rise there over the last, I guess, few years, and then like lately. Can you speak to us about the rise of the gym in recent times? So you have a lot of lads going pro. You have a few lads thriving on the amateur scene as well. I know you're coaching out of there and everything. What's it like in there at the moment?
Oh, the guys there are crazy, man. All Eastern European guys, they come in with this madness. They come in with this madness, this eager, this hunger. Yeah, they're all like the likes of the Stanker brothers, Dima, all scary. And the fact that they're so young and they're getting into this and they're already at that level, like, I'm looking forward to what the future has for them. The gym itself, has been around for a long time. There's been guys in and out. Like I've trained there before. I was with them. I trained there, and the whole phantom. After I left my old gym, after I left Cesaria, because I already had like what's it? Understanding with coach with Pavel. So I just went there and everything's blooming.
How do you find the progression in mixed martial arts? Obviously, like you're a guy who was fighting professionally way back in 2010, and you've seen kind of the transcendence of mixed martial arts in the country of Ireland, and obviously the training has progressed as the sport is evolving as well. A lot of people don't remember that you were way back in the day and one of the OGs of Irish mixed martial arts because you were out there and you hadn't competed in a number of years during that spell. You had to take on the sidelines, but you're back, and it must feel good to be back as well, especially when Irish MMA and the scene has much more notoriety than it ever did back in 2010.
Yeah, 100%, man. I was in MMA before MMA was cool. Like before my long break. Before I went to EFC, like the last time I fought in Ireland was on Cage Warriors, and it was the same night Conor fought Ivan Bushinger for the second belt. I was on that card as well, and like since then, MMA is it's crazy.
You talking about the break there. What was the story with the 4-year break? Am I opening a can of worms here?
Life got in the way. Life got in the way, and then there was the whole immigration papers and not being able to travel and all that shit. Like, yeah, it got messy for a while. But yeah, the break helped, man. It helped me reset. It helped me, clear my mind, come back as Henry Hurt 2.0.
At that time, was it difficult when you were unable to kind of compete? Obviously, when you're training and you're always looking towards that objective of competing and showcasing your skills. Was it a tough time for you mentally?
It was, especially because like the last fight that I had scheduled before the break happened was I was supposed to fight Dricus du Plessis, who's now number 2 in the world for middleweight. I was scheduled to fight Dricus du Plessis for the EFC welterweight title. I trained 6 months straight for this guy, and 2 months before the fight, I went to get the visa, and in the office, the woman, like the lady there, just fucked up my life, man. It just made everything hell and just ruined everything. So yeah, it was a big kick in the teeth, and then to sit back and watch all these people like blooming and growing, and like fucking Drickers going to KSW and then into UFC, and me just sitting on like I couldn't leave Ireland at the time, so I couldn't go from fighting on EFC to fighting on freaking like Clan Wars and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It was yeah. Anyway,
but you're back now. You don't have to worry about any. Yeah, you don't have to worry about any of that now. Artur Shapaniak is your guy that you will be facing at KSW 86. Guy who's coming off of a vacant title shot, a guy who's a good striker. I think the fact he's coming off a vacant title shot shows what KSW kind of thinks of him and shows what KSW thinks of you to put you in this opportunity. And surely you're thinking, go in here, a good performance and a win is going to catapult you up the division and put you into title contention.
Yeah, so my last fight put me into the top 10 rankings. I got ranked number 8. Artur was meant to fight number 3, Mikhail. And Mikhail got injured, so they asked me to jump in, which I did. And after this fight, I reckon one more fight and it'll be a title shot.
Are you sticking at welterweight for the foreseeable things? I know this one's catchweight, isn't it, for some reason, or is it?
Yeah, it's catchweight because it was 3 weeks' notice.
Very fair. And you're looking up the rankings now, and without looking past this fight too much, like, you think one more fight for a title, or do you think there might even be an opportunity to go straight to a title fight? Because if you look at the guys that you fought previously.
I think probably one more fight because of what happened in my second fight. I think I'd need one more. Well, I think they think I would need one more. But like, there's a lot of guys up there. There's a lot of hungry guys. There's a lot of really good guys. Like the guy Artur was initially supposed to fight. He's a scary motherfucker. So there's him. There's Brian Hoy, which I thought I'd fight at some point before the title. And I don't know. We'll see how it goes anyway. I might go in there and kick this guy in the teeth some special way and they just, give him the title, but we'll see.
It seems that you're really finding a resurgence though. Like after such a long time off, and now you're back and you're on a great tear. And obviously, you know, you've had a couple losses here and there, but like, I mean, you got the first Peruvian necktie in promotional history there in one of your first fights at KSW. It seems like the promotion are really behind you. Do you feel
the
that
promotion are really behind me. The country's really behind me. Like they like the internationals over there. Yeah, things are looking up since the breaks. Things are looking up. Like also it's because of I think how I fight, how I finish fights. Like it's not like they say it's very hard to train for someone. Like when I go in the fight, I don't really go in with a game plan. Like I surprise myself most of the time I fight. Like the Peruvian necktie, that was not planned at all. So stuff like that, I think is the reason.
So you would go into this fight with Arthur not really kind of game planning too much. You just focus on yourself more so than focus on.
Man, it's like freestyle fighting, so to speak.
Old school. That's the way it was back in the day as well, I guess. You just throw yourself in there. You had no time to tape study. You had no time to do anything. And I mean, you know, that probably gives you a little bit more freedom and confidence to take these fights at short notice as well, does it, Henry?
Definitely. Like all that cooking up game plans. What I found with the game plans thing, like you have game plan A, plan B. You go in there, something goes wrong, and you start to panic, and because you're like tunnel vision into what you're trying to do, is rather than just feeling the fight and enjoying the fight, you know.
Big time.
When I look at KSW recently, you look at lads, as you said, they like fighters that aren't from Poland. They get the lads in. I look at Phil de Vries, for example, is a perfect example. Norman Park up north of it. Guys who've gone up there and they've made a really big name and a very well-established career where they could nearly stay in KSW and just become a legend out there. Could you see yourself doing that, or do you 100%, think
that's the plan? That's the plan right now. Everyone keeps asking me about, do you want to go there? Do you want to go here? UFC and they talking about Bellator and UFC. I fought in Cage Warriors. I was supposed to get signed to Cage Warriors, but I went to EFC instead back then. Like they're all very. I don't want to say like slipping the same shit I should be saying. Like they're all very professional, but backstage there's been certain things I've seen that aren't as professional. Here, like it's what you see is the same way back. It's the same story backstage. Like it's all professionalism. It's all high class stuff on camera and off camera. You know.
What's it like in the arenas? Because we can only see it from a viewer's perspective, but the Polish crowd seem absolutely. It seems like chaos inside these arenas whenever anyone fights.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, they have me fighting guys, and they have me fighting local guys in their hometowns the past while, which has been wild. I go in there, and it's like I walk out, and I hear crickets, and then this chap comes out, and it's like fuck you. But no, it's actually I'm in the car. This freaking girl come by. Yeah, no, it's cool, man. It's so part of the shit.
Have you found much? I remember when the likes of Norm went over, they had this. They managed to start getting support from the Polish fans against their own to a point. Have you got any of that yet?
Yeah. You know, there's obviously you're gonna get half fans regardless of where you are. Like, there's been the back and forth. There's been guys who are on my side. Like the last fight, I was walking down because I was in his hometown, and I walked into a shop, and there was guys. They're like, look, pointing fingers and acting very hostile. And then you go into different places, like, Fadipe, and like you get the mix, you know.
Look, we won't keep you much longer, but do you know, we're so close to the fight now. Do you have any predictions for us going into this one?
Yeah, something special. Something special. I don't know what, but something special. Maybe a special submission. I'm expecting a bonus for something. I don't know what, but something.
Do you prefer a knockout or a submission?
For this one, probably submission because I like the guy. I only like knocking out guys who I don't like. Like this guy, he's a nice guy. I probably just submit him.
Are you thinking that when you're going into the cage? You're like, this guy's nice.
It depends. The last guy I was fighting, like he was actually like he was really respectful and he was all that, and I was like, nah. You try obviously trying to knock him out, but that bit of respect. Yeah, exactly.
Is there anybody that you don't like in the KHW welterweight division?
Nah, not yet. I'm waiting for someone to be big. I'm waiting for someone to be big.
Well, thanks for taking the time, Henry. September
Thank you,
16th,
man.
this
Thank you,
Saturday,
thank you.
this Saturday, KSW 86 against Arthur Shapaniak. We wish you all the best. We thank you for taking the time today ahead of
Thank
your
you so
fight.
much,
And we
man.
look forward to seeing you next weekend, my man. Thanks for taking the time, Henry.
Thank
All
you
the
so much,
best,
man.
Henry.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right, lads, Bellator Dublin is coming right up on our doorsteps. It's not too far away. We are set to go down in just under 2 weeks' time now, on the 23rd of September. And another good card on show there. This one, I don't know, it's kind of, with everything else that's been going on, this one's kind of snuck up on the radar with us, hasn't it? Does it kind of feel that way for you, Andy?
It does. Well, look, it's a few different things for me. I'm heading off to Japan, so I'm going to miss this one. So it's one of those ones where I'm not going to be there. So it's probably a little bit off my radar as a result. Although I think it's more so for everyone. It's this uncertainty with Bellator where it's like, right, there's this fight card coming up, and then what's happening? Like, what's next? Like, obviously, you know, for Fabian Edwards and Johnny Eblen, there's a title on the line in the main event. But for all these other fighters, it's hard to know what stuff means. Like Sinead Kavanagh, for example, she's fighting Sarah Collins, and you know, if Sinead Kavanagh gets a win here, she should be 100% calling for a title shot. I know all the talk has been, you know, Liam McCourt and Sarah McMahon are fighting, and that seems to be kind of putting forward the next contender. But if you're Sinead Kavanagh, you're saying, well, hang on, I've got to win over Leah. So what if Leah wins? You know, there's a few people with title shouts here.
Yeah,
so
I guess what you're alluding to too is the news that broke this week that the probable takeover of Bellator from PFL, and we spoke to Kieran Clark about it the last time he was on as well. But anyone who's not in the know is that there's been a lot of moving and shaking on that sale. Rumors are having it that PFL are in final negotiations to take over Bellator as a company with a valuation of 500 million. And there's a strong possibility, guys, that this may be the last Bellator card that we ever see in Dublin, you know. No plans as to,
yeah, Jesus,
hopefully not,
mad,
but
isn't it?
it's maybe they'll come back under the PFL banner. We don't know what plans.
But you're right, like it could be easy. It could easily be.
So it'll be very interesting, and it's not a nice feeling to not know what's next, especially for, like you said, the likes of Eblen and Edwards who will do it. But Pedro Carvalho fighting Aaron Pico, I mean, a win there for Pedro would put him right back in the mix, as well as Sinead Kavanagh is always there in the mix, and another win for her puts her right up there at 145. But, you know, is there going to be divisions? Is there going to be titles? Are they going to be fighting their next fight under a PFL banner, under a Bellator banner? How does the takeover go? What kind of formula will they kind of provide after the takeover happens? That's all up in the air right now. We can only speculate, but you know, that's something that will be in the back of the mind of all of these fighters. But overall, Caoilte, looking at the card, we have Kieran Clark, Charlie Ward, Peter Creeley is back, Derek Kelly, and we have Kenny Makahana that will also fight on the card as well. You know, lots to look forward to. Is there any kind of standout fights or any kind of thing that you're looking forward to most on the card?
Yeah, Pedro Carvalho versus Aaron Pico for me is just it's a massive fight, I feel, and it's very worthy of a co-main event. Huge fight for Pedro. Aaron Pico is a huge name in Bellator, he's been a huge name in the US for years before he even debuted in MMA. So what a big opportunity, massive fight, and I love that one for the card. Looking further down, if I look at the prelims, I reckon the Kieran Clark, as you mentioned last week, another fantastic one. But Derek Kelly against Gilles Ziegers, I'm not sure how to say his name. The two of them, that should be a good fight. Good to see Derek Kelly back in there. But look, it's Asael Ajuj is back in there as well against Ibrahim Al-Faki Hassan. He's fight at a Manchester top team. That should be a very, very good fight from what I've seen from both of them so far as well. So yeah, huge card. So many fights to look at that it's nearly impossible to pick out a single fight that's a standout.
Jesus, lads, it's a 21 fight card though as well. It's going to be a monster marathon session. There's going to be, I know, like we kind of have people live, and I'll be kind of doing a lot of stuff in the background. But these Bellator shows, man, they put on a lot of pressure on. I know, like the likes of you lads that'll be there on the ground as well with Sean and Graham. And then, you know, we're trying to get some editing done and some thumbnails done and post on social media. It's Bellator. They like to make it hard on us. It's like the 21 fight card in general, lads. It's almost, you know, it's great that everyone is getting the opportunity, but it's almost too long of a card. Would you agree?
It's a long out slog. Now, to be fair, the fee paying ticket holders, they get their money's worth. They get a lot of fights to watch. They get a lot of Irish fighters to get behind. But it's long because look, and to be honest, you notice this sometimes in the arena where there's peaks and valleys where the crowd are up, and some of it is predicated on the Irish results. But part of it is when there's just sometimes you get a couple of fights in the middle where I'm looking. There's not too many, but there's a few fights where maybe there's not an Irish fighter or an SPG fighter on, and there's a few fights that people probably just the Irish fans probably just won't care about.
They have it spread out quite well in terms of you have a couple at the bottom of the card. Well, the first couple of ones obviously you have Luca Poklin who kind of trains out of SPG. There would be a little bit of interest there, and Asela Juge as well. The same there as
then. Both exciting fighters,
exciting fighters. Then we have
Juge's class.
Yeah, Dara Kelly and Kieran Clark and Charlie and Peter. They're kind of a mixture in the middle, and Brian Moore obviously as well with Kenny Makahana. So if they spread out the fights a little bit, and kind of give us a bit of a chance to kind of get the interviews in and to do that would be nice, but it doesn't always work out that way. Anything? Caoilte mentioned a couple of fights. Anything standing out to you, Andy, on this card that you're really looking forward to? I would agree with Caoilte. Pedro and Aaron Pico is a fantastic fight. Always excited to see Brian Moore go in there, and he's going in there at 145 now as well. It'll be interesting to see what kind of performance he has against Otto Rodriguez. But you could name almost. Obviously, we're going to be very interested in pretty much all the fights here, but a couple of established professionals, a couple of guys that are, starting off in their professional career, all important fights in their own right.
It's less the fights and it's the fighters that I'm more looking at. When it comes to the fights, it's the ones you've already mentioned. It's kind of the top of the card. Johnny Eblen, Fabian Edwards, obviously Pico versus Carvalho is title implications. Well, they'd be knocking on the door, the winner of that, for a title shot at some point, or at least one away. Sinead Kavanagh would be knocking on the door, or one away from a title shot, with a win over Sarah Collins, Mads Burnell, Daniel Wojcik. But as you go to the prelims, it's really more about the fighters for me. Like Peter Queally, how does he look? Is he going to rebound here after a tough run of form? Kieran Clark's obviously dropping to bantamweight, so that's intriguing for me. He's still 7-0. He's going into free agency here. This is his last fight in his contract. Hassan Magomed Sharipov, he's not Irish, but he's just class. We watched him last time there. He looked great. And then there's the undefeated fighters and Dara Kelly, Kenny Muckenwana, who is, you want to see how they're progressing. So it's really about fighters for me. Obviously, again, as you mentioned, Brian Moore moving to featherweight. I can go on and on because there's so many fighters, and I'm going to forget someone here, but it's more about the fighters and less about the matchups on the prelims for me. That's just really it. It's there's not a whole lot of for me to bite my teeth into when it comes to the specific matchups.
100%. Look, we won't get into the nitty gritty of the fights. We maybe try get together for a little bit of a preview before the card, but we will certainly dig our teeth into all the fights after they have happened on the next episode of the Auld Triangle podcast. And very excited to see. Look at for Irish mixed martial arts sake, I hope this is not the last Bellator Dublin card. I hope that the level of uncertainty surrounding Bellator and PFL kind of gets, we need to hear a little bit of information. And I'm sure that, obviously you would definitely ask the question, Andy, if you're there, and we will be asking the questions to Scott Coker and just what can they tell us about the future of the promotions. And because right about now we're only up to Bellator 300, there's only one more event after this, and there's nothing being scheduled after that, so it'll be very interesting to see how that develops. But no matter what happens, we know the Irish mixed martial arts scene for Bellator is a very kind of prosperous one for them, and it's been a good relationship. And there's been the ticket sales for this one haven't been all that great from what I've seen so far. Or how are we looking on that side of things? It'll be interesting to see as well. But there's a lot of competition in Irish mixed martial arts now for a lot of different organizations coming in, so I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a late surge here for this card as well.
And the one other thing I'd say about this is, look, if this is, and I hope it's not, if it is the last Bellator Dublin card for the foreseeable, I'm kind of glad that they're stacking it and getting as many lads paid as possible as well, because a lot of people on contracts that are kind of depending on this type of income. So yeah, I stack them more, lash some more SPG fighters on, lash some more Irish fighters on, and get them paid. But look, hopefully this is all a moot point, and even if whether they're bought or whatever happens, that there's the same kind of opportunities for these fighters as there has been.
100%. Yeah. Right after Bellator Dublin, the very next day, our Fighting Championships, run by Decky McAleenan and the crew up there, will come back for their 8th
Legend.
installment. Yeah, really looking forward to that as well. Kind of a similar time scale on the last one. It was the next day after Bellator too. So, a double dose. We got Irish MMA on the big stage, and we got some really, really good regional action as well. A fighter that we've really been looking forward to speaking to is fighting on that card is who will actually fight under Peter Caoilte and Sergey over there at SBG Nace. Is Conor McCarthy. He fights on the card for the super lightweight title against Sam Simon. Let's head on over. I'll send it over to myself to speak to Conor about that fight. We'll come back. We'll talk about the rest of the card before we finish up. So over to you, Ian. Now we'd like to welcome Conor McCarthy to the Auld Triangle podcast. And it was last time we seen you, Conor, was at the Irish National Championships. And you're definitely a shoe-in to come on this podcast after giving us the shout-out after that knockout. So we're excited to have you on. We were waiting for the right moment, and I guess now is the right moment. You've got a fight coming up on our Fighting Championships. We're really looking forward to seeing you going up there against Sam Simon. But I guess before we get into the fight, before we get into the details of that fight, how have you been? How have things been since the National Championships? What have you been up to?
Good, thanks lads for having me on. My shout out worked, the plan to get me on this show. Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, just mainly I've just been training, haven't competed like you said since the Nationals. I was kind of focusing on an internship that was a mandatory part of college. I just had to work full time for 6 months. So I still kept a good rate training, but just kind of stepped back from competition. But camp for this fight's been great. I'm feeling good.
That's one thing I always admired about you when I've been looking at you on the come up as well, is that you're balancing your training, you're balancing your professional life at the same time. For anyone that maybe hadn't heard that story before, what are you kind of studying at the minute, and what are you balancing your mixed martial arts career with at the moment?
So I'm a full-time student in DCU. I'm studying electronic and computing engineering, and I'm going into my final year now. So over the last 6 months, it's kind of mandatory that you get experience working in a firm. So I just kind of been 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, working. So yeah, that's why I kind of balance my training around the last 3 years.
Why was it important for you to get that education sorted as well, along with balancing? Because we see a lot of people that kind of push that to the side and fully focus on the projection of their MMA career. But for you, you wanted to kind of get that education, have it in your back pocket. Obviously, then once you get that all settled, you'll probably focus on your MMA career. Is that how you see it?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. So kind of a few reasons. I've always kind of been into studying when I was in school, and I always wanted to go to college and graduate. It was kind of a bit nerdy into maths and all that crack, so I started doing engineering. Then I suppose I was only in first year, second year when I started kind of taking MMA as serious as it is now. I've been fighting since I'm 14, 15 in boxing, but I wouldn't even thought of it as a career back then. It's kind of only up in recent years that I've this is what I'm going to try pursue full time after I graduate. And like you said, yeah, so I graduate in May, and then I'll just be full focus on training.
When was the decision that you made with yourself that you wanted to give mixed martial arts a full-on go? You said, I can actually achieve something in this sport.
That's a good one. It was kind of more of a gradual kind of process, It was kind of more I was having good success, and it's more so just a love for it I have. I'm really passionate about martial arts and the training. So yeah, I say with it I said, probably 2 to 3 years. I kind of been thinking this could be something I could really do full time. Always as a kid and all, I thought it would be class to be a pro fighter when I was boxing when I was 16, 17, but it kind of came a bit more realistic in just probably the last 2 years.
Was it something for you, Conor, in boxing that you seen, or was it something in MMA that you seen that really sparked the passion or really make you want you to kind of get in there, get training and kind of pursue that side of things on your career?
Definitely, the MMA side of things. Probably it was only really the last probably year and a half I started thinking I'm going to go pro. Because when I first started fighting, it was more so just to kind of see what the story is. I made my debut only 2 years ago, actually. So it's been a short space of time, to be fair. And probably 3-4 fights in, I was well, I'm definitely going pro. And, you know, maybe originally that thought was just like to say I've fought pro. Now it's like, you know, I want to be a successful pro. I want to be in major organizations. So yeah, probably just the last year, probably because I was this success I had at MMA, and then even the team I'm around and the individuals I get to train with and see what they do. I was like, well, if they can do that, I want, you know, there's no reason I can't do that. I can't make a career at this.
Conor, even when it... Sorry, go ahead, Caoilte.
When did the transition from boxing to MMA actually begin in the first place? What point did you decide to do that?
I probably was in like TY. Yeah, I was in TY and I started doing, so maybe I'm 16, 15. I don't know actually what age I was. Yeah, probably around 16. I started doing a bit of Muay Thai. So my boxing club, they opened like a Tuesday night. Muay Thai, they ran like 2 Muay Thai classes a week or something like that. And I started doing that. Thought it was mad cool, like learning how to kick and all. And I'd kind of got a bit like fed up with boxing. Like, I wanted to just try something new. So I started doing that. Then I was like, okay, what other martial arts is there? There's like jiu-jitsu, and I went to jiu-jitsu gym, did a bit of training there. And then in 2018, SBG Nace just announced their opening. And there wasn't really any like MMA gyms in Kildare. There was like, I think there was one, but SBG Nace was relatively close to me. So said I'll give it a shot. And then I became obsessed with the training. Like I loved it because I just felt like I was kind of doing something different every training session. Like I found boxing kind of got a bit repetitive. Like there is loads you can do, like different combinations, footwork, headwork. Like it's very broad as well. But I just found MMA, I was doing something different every night, and I just like got such a love for it.
And what's it been like when you train inside SBG Nace? You've got such a wealth of knowledge around you. You've got Peter, obviously, who's competing the highest level in terms of Bellator. You've got Sergey then, who's probably an unsung hero at certain times in terms of how much he's brought wrestling in Ireland on. But like, what's it like having these people around you train you there?
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's really good. I can't like I'm delighted with the team I have. Even for my confidence and all. Like when I'm with them, having them in my corner, just learn so much from them as well. Like, you know, I can always pick their brain, pick up little bits to add to my game as well. Like, yeah, no, I'm loving it. Training nice.
Conor, I know, like you were talking about, like that you do see this as a career moving forward, but as you mentioned, you're in college at the moment. Are you even in a position now where you kind of want to be training full time, or like is there, like, do you kind of want that college experience at the same time where you know there's more to life than just fighting?
Yeah. Look, it can be tough. Like, so after a fight, I give myself usually 2 weeks to have crack. You know, like live a normal life as a college student, whatever, 3 nights out a week, so that type of crack. It is great, but I even find like I think I'm at my happiest, and I'm like when I'm training full time, when I'm in camp. I think that's the lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. I think any fighter you talk to, it has to be a lifestyle. You know, you have to like enjoy kind of what you're doing. And yeah, I think this lifestyle's for me. Obviously, college, going out, all that stuff is great crack as well. But just the discipline, like I feel better. Like, you know, I'm eating good food, training. Like even I'm probably a happier version of myself when I'm in camp compared to when I'm outside of camp. You know.
Absolutely. And when it comes to lifestyle, you obviously had to make some changes to your lifestyle a couple of years ago. For anyone who doesn't know, you were diagnosed with, I'm forgetting the name now, diabetes.
Yeah.
And then I know you were managing, you know, kind of figuring out essentially weight management while dealing with, you know, glucose levels and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
How has that all been, and where are you at with that now?
Yeah, lads, I have a pretty good management of my diabetes. So I'm type 1 diabetic. That's kind of the one that's in your genes, and it just decided to kick in for one day when I was 20 years old, or 19. It's mad, lived 19 years normal, then just decided to kick in, lost like 10 kilos in weight and all, and whatever. It's a long process, but basically back to kind of your question, and I don't see myself as any different to any other fighter. Just a few like kind of things I have to do for training and cutting weight a bit differently, but like, you know, I'm the exact same. It doesn't inhibit me to do anything, and yeah, like I won't let it kind of interfere with anything. That's kind of my look on it, you know.
Was the weight, you know, fluctuation, was that just a temporary thing then? Like does that, for example, would that have affected where you would decide to go in terms of weight class moving forward or anything like that?
No, not really. So basically, in a nutshell, it was basically my body was eating itself, and I was like going on. I was nearly on like a deathbed when I went into hospital, you know. So basically, my sugars are through the roof. It starts eating your muscles, starts eating your fat to try get energy, because basically my body's starving. It's a complicated whatever. I'm not going to go into it too much, but that's why it was just a drastic weight. Like this within 2 weeks, nearly 10 kilos falling off me naturally. Like I would have been in a coma if I hadn't got to hospital probably within a few days at that stage. So yeah, it doesn't affect, kind of, to answer your question, nothing to do what weight I am now. I actually gained a lot of weight when I came out of hospital because I kind of took a break from martial art training, just started doing weights. So that's actually why I started fighting welterweight when I came back from my debut fight, because I was walked around before maybe 75. Then I started lifting a lot of weights, kind of filled out a bit as well. So I got up to about 80. And for my first few fights, I wasn't really cutting much weight. It was like 3 kilos over a camp, which if you talk to any fighter, that's not a lot at all.
Conor, with your diabetes, if it's not too complicated to answer, you said you have to make some slight differences. Obviously, weight cutting on its own right is a dangerous part of the sport to have to do, and to try and do it safely. What kind of things do you have to consider when you're weight cutting when you have diabetes?
So just to kind of go brief overview, when you cut weight, most fighters will cut out carbs and sodium. I'm sure you heard about that. And carbohydrate is the main kind of food supplement which affects your blood sugar. So cutting out carbs as a diabetic is very complicated. Just to kind of give you a bit of an insight, I take nearly 7 injections of insulin a day to keep myself going, as every other diabetic would. That's around our food and all. When I cut weight, for 3 days, I don't take 1 injection. So I am missing nearly 20 injections when I'm cutting weight. Like, it's pretty complicated. I work with a really good team in Tala, dietitians, endocrinologists, who have actually kind of made a plan for me to actually safely cut weight. But yeah, it's pretty complicated, but I'm so used to it now. I've had 12 MMA fights. I kind of cut a bit more weight each time and safely built up to nearly what I'm at. Like, I feel like I could have cut as much weight as possible. It wouldn't affect me any other way.
In there at SBG Nace, like Caoilte said, there seems to be like a real good atmosphere that Peter has created in there, along with everybody else as well. Obviously you've probably been in there kind of helping him, Peter, out maybe for the Bellator fight that he has coming up as well. Seeing Peter's rise and him getting to the big stages, is that kind of inspiring to you? And are you lucky? Do you feel lucky to have the guidance of the lads at SBG Nace to kind of guide you along your amateur career so far and your professional career that will be incoming over the next few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hugely. Yeah, like Peter's a huge inspiration to me, and not only he's a coach, kind of like a mentor. Like, we learn. Yeah, he invests a lot of time in us. I learned so much kind of about inside and outside the cage, about fighting. Yeah, I can't speak more highly of them. Sergey as well, Keen Conlon, my jiu-jitsu coach. And I have a brilliant team in Nace and a lot of good role models, I think, for the gym as well.
What's it like having an active fighter though as a coach as well? Is there a bit of kind of a healthy rivalry? Did the spars get a bit feisty between you?
Yeah, especially our cardio sessions, they're deadly. I love when me and Pierre are both in camp, because if I don't know if you see the Instagram, if you know, you know.
This
those
is
sessions. Yeah, no, I can't give you the secrets, Andy. I'm sorry, but
he's giving them away on Instagram, so
you're close though. You're close. Yeah, it's one of those machines. But yeah, just disgusting sessions on them. Trying to leave every bit we have on those machines. So it's brilliant. And as well, it's funny, for the last IUR show, it was the day before, it was the day after Bellator. And it's the same with this one as well. So, Peter was at the venue before I was, after fighting in Tree Arena. Obviously, didn't go his way. But yeah, even that, I have so much respect for that. He's going to be there again at IUR after the next Bellator. So, yeah, it's great,
What do you see about Sam Simon, and how do you see yourself matching up with him? You're going in there, Ur Fighting Championships 8 for the super lightweight belt. We've talked about a little bit before that you came on with us there. You quite enjoy competing at Ur Fighting Championships. Decky gets some good matchups for you. You're looking forward to getting in there. It's been a while since you have. Obviously, you had your reasons for taking time, and you must be buzzing to get back.
I can't wait. I'm actually so excited to fight. During the 6 months off I was actually trying to get 1 or 2 matchups. I kind of fell through. So look, I can't wait. I feel like I've added a few tools to my game that I'd like to show off as well. How do I see myself matching up against Sam Simon? I think I'm a lot technically a lot better. So I think that his skills were shown tonight. It's like if you see any other of my fights going to go in there, putting my game on them, like I think, yeah, I'm very confident. Not that I'm not trying to like disrespect Sam or anything. I think like he's strong. He seems like he can wrestle, he can box. So, but I'm just very confident in my own skills. I think I get the job done.
How would you
this one
describe?
going to be?
Oh, go on.
Is this one
Peter.
going to be 5 rounds? Because last time we saw you had 5 rounds. It's going to be the same round this time.
Sadly not. No, I'd love to do 5 rounds, and actually a bit it's a bit sad that they're not doing that anymore. Sadly not.
How would you
Oh, sorry,
go on. No, go ahead.
Is there a reason there's not 5 rounds, or is it just?
Yeah, and I don't think I should go into too much detail on a recording, but yeah, just basically there's a lot of damage taken in one of the last 5-round fight, and they're just not going to do it going forward, which like I can't understand from their perspective. Obviously, like I would love to get the 15 minutes, you know, because this could be my last amateur fight, but I do understand the reasons behind it.
I was going to go down that way as well. You know, you just said it. This is going to be your last amateur fight, so professional is on the horizon for you. What kind of timescale would you like to kind of make that happen for yourself, Conor?
Well, it probably won't. Well, I hope it's not before I graduate college. Yeah, no, I'm going to finish college first, and that will be I'll graduate in May. So I'd imagine I'll be able to keep a good level of training right through college as I do. Like I nearly can do 2 sessions a day in college. So it could be maybe early summer, end of summer. That would be the pro debut most likely. And I'd imagine I won't take another amateur fight. If something pops up and it's nice, I might take one. But I think the plan is this is the last amateur fight. And just still like start evolving as a fighter still. Like, you know, I've got 8 months of training before my pro debut then. So I can still level up, add new tools to my game. So yeah, I think that's the plan and the timeline. Yeah, maybe August next year, you'll be seeing my pro debut.
Nice. How do you look back? Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Sorry, keep coming in each other.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You're all good. Why now? Why is the decision to go pro been made?
I think I've got enough experience as an amateur. I fought like in 3 different countries. I've, you know, had tough competition. Like yeah, my coaches think the time is now to go pro. There's not much more I probably could get at amateur. I could get like those 5-round fights would be brilliant experience for it. But I think, you know, I've equipped enough experience and skills to go pro. Like I spar a lot of pros, and I think I'm at. Well, I do believe I'm at that level now.
How do you see your professional career kind of progressing, Conor? Do you look that far ahead, or do you kind of just keep the tunnel vision to what's next for you? I mean, there's lots of options right now. We've talked about on the podcast, you know, as a fighter coming into the professional ranks, you probably have as much options as a fighter has ever had in Ireland, whether it's a couple of the domestic shows that are happening, obviously the likes of Bellator, PFL, you know, talks of obviously the UFC coming in as well. What do you see your path being in the professional ranks?
I'm not exactly sure, but like a rough idea was probably one or 2 fights, a couple of fights maybe on the regional scene, and then looking to get signed to one of the major organizations. Like the UFC would be a huge goal. But I said it would be hard to turn down one of the other. If one of the other contracts came first, it would be hard to probably turn down one of them. So yeah, I'd imagine it'll be regional scene for maybe the first year, and then starting to look at bigger things.
100%.
When you look at your career though, like what, you're obviously an intelligent guy to be studying electronic and computer engineering. You clearly have other options. Like you don't, by the sounds like you don't have to necessarily go in here and fight to make money. So when it comes to approaching a profession, I suppose in fighting, is it, you know, are you thinking I want to make as much money as possible? Are you thinking purely legacy? Are you thinking a combination of the two? Like what do you want to get out of your career?
Like even just to touch on that, I turned down a graduate program in the internship I did. So I was offered like a nice engineering job. I could have had, 2 days at home, had a cozy life there. But, you know, turning down that was the first step in like even my belief in myself. You know, I think I can make a good career by doing something I love. I think it's a combination of what you said, Andy. Like I said, when the people like my family and all, like when I'm on my deathbed, I want to have all these are the things, like the experiences you take to your grave, you know. And I want to have an exciting life, want to do something I love. So I think it's a combination. Like obviously I want to make money doing whatever I'm doing, and I want to take all these experiences, like make to the UFC, make to these big organizations, have big fights, like see how good I can be, try to reach my full potential.
I actually studied electronic and computer engineering, and I took the long road, and I almost dropped out after my third year. And I remember telling my mom and dad, and they were livid. So I'm very, very curious to know, like, what does your family think of you deciding, no, you know what, I'm not going to go down this engineering route. I'm gonna fight in a cage instead.
Yeah, look, they probably would have loved if I took that job offer, but they respect it. They really respect it. They say, like, you know, they can't really argue with that. You know, I've got my degree. Well, nearly, whatever, 3/4 got my degree. They can't argue with that. Like, they're just kind of whatever. They're going to support me, whatever. Obviously, like any parent, I don't think wants to see their child fight in a cage. But yeah, look, they're great. They support me with whatever I do.
Was it kind of a trade-off, was it, between like you get the degree and then you can get the green light to go ahead and pursue your professional career? Was that kind of the way it was, Conor?
Yeah. Look, I'm a realistic person as well. Like, I could, you know, touch wood. I had such bad injuries in this sport. It's an unforgiving sport as well, and I'm under no delusion, you know. So look, that's not a lack of belief on my behalf. I just want to, if it's not fighting, I'm going to pursue a good career in engineering, or, you know, that kind of way. It was more so for myself, just to have like options, you know. Yeah, and look, kept the parents happy, of course. You know, I was like, here's a nice degree, I'll get it 2-1. So you know, let me fight now, you know. So
I love it. No, like, I don't look at it as any other way, only a very intelligent way to approach your career, and I admire you for kind of going down that path. Look, it's not for everybody, but, you know, always having something in your back pocket. This is one of the most unforgiving sports that there is out there right now, and like you said, injuries can happen, anything can happen, and, you know, at least you do have something to kind of fall back on. And, you know, I think it's just fascinating that how you're able to reach the level that you've reached so far, with the level of other commitments that you have and all the other hurdles that you've had in your career. And, you know, this is not going to be the first time that you'll be on the Auld Triangle. I'm sure we'll speak to you time and time again, but we really do appreciate the time. Our Fighting Championships 8, Sam Simon for the super lightweight belt. That's where fans can see you next. Any predictions?
Yeah, I think a TKO second, third round. Yeah, I think that's what I'm feeling. Yeah, hopefully.
Have we got a nickname yet, Conor?
Yeah, there's one in the works, lads. I don't know. There's one in the works. It's not a.
Here definitely has something worked up for you. I mean,
it does. Yeah.
What is it?
Look, because I always walk out to the song, "Here Comes the Hot Stepper," so they call me the Hot Stepper in the gym, and some of the lads do. And that was just we used to listen to that song in college, and we'd always be playing it. I was like, I'm going to start walking out to that. And then all the lads started calling me the Hot Stepper, kind of as a joke. So we just kept that song rolling. Maybe that nickname will come official.
I love it. Conor the Hot Stepper McCarthy. It has a ring to it. We're Fighting Championships 8 is where we'll see you, Conor. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's a real pleasure. One of the top prospects in Irish mixed martial arts. We're looking forward to seeing you at our Fighting Championships 8, and we look forward to seeing your career progression. A solid top prospect inside the cage and a top prospect engineer outside the cage. It's a pleasure to talk to you today, Conor.
Cheers, lads. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, no worries, man. Thank you.
Nice one, Conor.
Cheers.
All right, boys, good to hear from Conor McCarthy there as well. Joins one of a number of really good fights, Caoilte, on the Our Fighting Championships card. Do you want to kind of give us a quick run through the card, maybe some of the fights that you're looking forward to seeing? Always a good event that Decky puts on there, and good matchmaking as well.
Yeah, main card is just incredible. Decky always puts on a very good show, and it's stacked with title fights. We've got main event's going to be Conor McCarthy and Sam Simon for the super lightweight title. Fantastic fight. As we spoke to Conor about it there. Kieran Brady versus Ross Kearney from CMAC, and for the bantamweight title then in the next fight, Dara Ward and Jess Paulo, two lads who they seem to be on every fight card in Ireland at this point, lads. It's incredible. Their activity is just second to none, and they're competing out for the welterweight title. Jamie Bissett is back. I think his last time out he was against Zach Fry over in the UKFC, and it was a loss, his only fight this year, but he's back on Irish soil competing, and he takes on Damien McGuigan, who's been having a hell of a time recently after that spinning back kick KO recently that did the rounds. They battled out for
shout
flyweight
out to
title.
Damien McGuigan for that knockout. That was a sensational
Cracker.
knockout. I should have mentioned that earlier on, but that was a belter. But it's great to see him fighting on that card, and Andy, another cracking card as well. A couple of fights I'm looking forward to. Obviously, Conor McCarthy, who we spoke to. Good to see Jamie Abbott-Bissett in there, like we said, against Damien McGuigan for the flyweight title. That is a barn burner. Ross Queerney is back. We got the first women's title fight on our fighting championships between Emer Darcy and Sarah Elliott Sheridan as well. Another good one to look forward to. I know I'm probably after naming all the fights here, Andy, but maybe what are the standout ones for you?
Yeah, to me, honestly, that Jamie Abbott-Bissett and Damien McGuigan one, I can't wait for that. I just think back to Jamie Abbott-Bissett's fights with Gary Rooney. Like, that was an absolutely incredible amateur flyweight fight, and I think this one will be no different against McGuigan. Brady and Querney, that's going to be a brilliant one. Of course, we spoke with Conor and his fight with Simon. Simon has had a nice resurgence after some time off. A lot of time off away from MMA, and Conor, look. I think Conor's probably the best amateur in the country at the moment. There's a few fighters who can contend for that kind of moniker, but he's in flying form, and look, he'll take some beating. So if Sam Simon can go in here and beat Conor McCarthy, that is a huge scalp. And likewise, if it'll be another solid win against Sam Simon and a swan song for his amateur career. So brilliant fights on this and throughout the card. But yeah, I think you mentioned the Elliott Sheridan and Darcy one too. I like that matchmaking as well. Lots of fights, lots of great fights in this card.
Yeah, and obviously we have Cage Legacy around the corner as well, which we will spend a little bit of time on the next podcast as well. But it's all go as always, lads, in the world of Irish mixed martial arts, and it's great to be here to take you through the news. And we'll be back next week to cover Bellator in detail, Cage Legacy, our fighting championships, anything and everything Irish mixed martial arts, as we always glad to do here on the Auld Triangle podcast. Thanks to everybody for listening along. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell a friend, give us 5 stars, help the podcast grow. We appreciate all the love and support. We appreciate everybody listening in. I appreciate Andy Stevenson. I appreciate Caoilte Barra.
We appreciate you, Ian.
Thank you. There's a lot of appreciation going on here. And we, of course, appreciate all the fighters and coaches that give us something to talk about each and every week. Until the next time, Caoilte, see us out.
Gur míle amach with agus slán go fóill.